Hi everyone, Jared here. Time for the market video update. Let's have a look. We've got a lot to talk about, but just a quick look at these markets. A little bit of a down day in the Dow, S&P. Looks like they're probably going to end negative. I'm sure they will actually. We've got only about a minute and a half left. Pretty negative close on those guys. Nothing horrible, but down a bit. Oil is kind of hanging around in these lower areas, and gold has taken a big turn. So we're going to see where that's going to take us in the next leg of movement. No major news coming up today. As far we have the CPI for Australia is a decent mover, so keep an eye on that one, and that's definitely going to affect where that Australian dollar is sitting. We're going to talk about that in just a moment when we get to the Australian dollar chart. Coming into the UK session, we have meeting minutes out of the UK. That's going to be important, a big mover. We have the IFO, which is also very important for the UK. Then we have the FOMC statement, or excuse me, for Europe. And then we have the FOMC statement tomorrow morning for the US. So also a big important thing to look at there. That's going to be a big mover. And then just a quick little look. We've been keeping an eye on the dollar index and how it's been bouncing off this 82 level. We talked a little bit about how it was down around 79, 90-ish when we looked at the video yesterday. It hasn't moved a whole bunch. But it's up just a little bit. And what we're curious about is if this is a bit of a Fibonacci retracement and if this pair is going to start making its way back up. And that's going to be a big question. And we've got a lot of kind of curious levels right here. I'm really still at the point of waiting for a little bit more confirmation. Euro dollar, as I talked about, this 130 kind of 50 area on the euro dollar was a key point. This was where I made the video yesterday, and it was just sitting. It had just kind of come off these levels. And still it's really been there. It's just chattering around in this area, and it's tough to tell. Honestly, I do not know where this euro is headed for the next leg, and this is where we've just got to wait and get some more confirmation before we try to take any entries, because there is as good of a reason for this euro to turn down. It's just kind of testing this first daily fib right here on a big reversal, and there's a very good opportunity for this pair to continue right back down again. But likewise, it could be headed right back up into very potentially this 38% fib level, which is about 132.50, and that's a very likely target for this. Another 200 pips or so, and I think we might get a push up there. It looks like a lot of these other pairs are breaking through some of these upper levels, so we really might be looking at a larger turn up. The only thing that really has me on the fence about this whole thing is that nothing is looking good in Europe yet. In fact, it's still looking very bad, and I don't know how this euro is going to continue to rally through some of that crazy news. So that's what's got me a little just, I'm going to stay out of this thing until I see more confirmation. You can see that we've got a little bit of a trend line on this euro dollar right here, and I think that's going to be crucial and important. If the euro stays below this 130.50 area, then the break of this trend line, which is just below 130, is going to be very important. You can see that the market's currently about 40 pips off this. If we start to get a 1 hour crossover and a break of this trend line, I think that's going to be our new direction. I think we're going to get a very large move in that direction. But if we don't, then we could be looking for some higher runs, and that's where I think we just need to kind of wait and see. We need to get the euro above this high here, above 130. We could say above 130.60. There's a lot of selling pressure at that 130.60, so we've got to break trigger those stops at about 130.50, 130.60, and then we're probably going to see a run up to at least 131.50, if not 132.50. So that's kind of where I'm looking. Otherwise, we need to get this pair back below 130 and through that 1 hour crossover and through this ascending trend line and look for some big runs down into the mid to high 12700 or 120s, excuse me. So that's what we're looking for, and that's going to be a little bit dependent on a few other things that we see. The pound, as we saw here, 15600 was a very crucial level I was watching for, and you can see that it just broke it barely. We just barely got above that to about 156.17, 18. It looks like the pound might be able to hold, might be able to push through these upper levels, and that's what's leading me to believe that we might see a little bit of euro action higher as well. But again, the pound dollar is sitting at this first daily fib, just a tiny bit above this first daily fib. Could be testing that second daily fib, which is only about 156.50. That could be a turning point to take this pair back down, but we just don't know yet. We have to kind of wait. So on the upside, I don't know exactly if I'm going to be looking for an entry at this point or just waiting, and most likely I'll just be waiting on this pound dollar. If we do get some turns down, you can see that there's some trend lines very clearly in the works here. But we're a good distance off those trend lines, about 80 pips, 70 to 80 pips. A 1 hour crossover and a trend line break there would be a nice turning point, but it looks like we may end up with something more like a retracement down into maybe 155, 75, 80, and then a continuation up from there. So that's probably the more likely movement on this pound dollar that we'll be looking for. So again, pound dollar is a little bit of a wait and see. Euro yen, remember we talked about the euro yen, and this thing is, it broke some short-term retracements, and it's just sitting barely below that second daily fib level right there, which is a strong turning point. It's also sitting at the 38% fib on this big movement here, so this could very likely be a turning point as well. After a pretty decent downtrend, and this really starting to kind of come higher, there's very good reason to believe that these pairs could, be turning and heading back down off of some of these key resistances. But it's, once again, the confirmation is kind of, the bigger trend is still down. We're not out of these downtrends yet, and we're coming into strong levels of resistance. So it's a lot of unsurety of what's going on here. So euro yen, I'm probably going to wait on just a little bit. Possible entry on the euro yen would be some retracement back towards this 120 area, somewhere in there. 80 pips of retracement somewhere in that general area to start taking that pair up. But I think I'm going to stay out of the euro yen for just a little bit. Pound yen has definitely broken our trend line right here and made a very clear break. And this, once again, is what makes me curious and cautious about pound dollar and euro dollar pairs, because as the euro yen and the pound yen kind of lead the way higher, that just ups the likelihood that the euro dollar and pound dollar may continue higher as well. So we've got a very clear break of this big daily trend line right here, and the pound yen is above the second daily fib, and I would say is probably headed at least into some of this upper resistance here, about 122.50, 60. So probably another 100 pips and change higher is what we're looking for on this pound yen. So again, that's what's kind of making me lean towards the fact that we might be seeing some longer term upward movement on all those pairs. The Aussie dollar, we talked a little bit about this. This one bounced off the gap, bounced off this support right here, and ran back up. We talked a little bit about looking for an entry around 104.75, 80, and you can see it's just kind of sitting here. It ran all the way up to about 85, and it's just sitting here. There's lots of selling pressure on the Aussie dollar, but this pair may be headed up a little bit higher as well. And the thing that will be a big determining factor on this Aussie dollar is how it behaves on this daily chart. It made a nice breakout of this descending trend line right here, and it's retracing back. I actually think we're probably going to get a little more retracement back down into these lows, and that might be a good point to buy on the dip. The Aussie dollar still is probably good to sell right here with stops just above these highs, 15 to 20 pip stops with a ultimate target here of about 104.35. So looking for about 40 pips on the downside there to just double bottom on this support. And then I think this might be a good point to buy either 104.35 or about 103.85, 90 will be good buying points. But I think there's a little sell opportunity to take this pair lower. We can see on some of these smaller time frames that looks a little choppy on that 1 minute chart, but we can see some trend lines that have kind of been holding together on this 5 minute chart here, and you can see that the Aussie might have a decent chance of continuing down there. We're only 10 pips off that high, and we have a decent trend line break, so I think we could get this Aussie headed back down lower. But once again, we've got news coming out of Australia, the CPI, in a couple of hours, which can definitely affect things. So a short-term trade, yes, but you've got to watch out for that news that's coming up. And gold has so far reacted very well off my trend line here. It just barely hit our high of 1680, went to 1681, and it's headed back down decently, but it definitely has not confirmed, and it's really running up this trend line. If we get a bigger trend line break, that will affect all the pairs across the board, but that is also a little bit of a wait and see, and we don't have much confirmation there, so kind of looking, waiting, trying to see where this whole situation's going. Looks like gold's going to break, but we just don't know quite yet. And the dollar Swiss franc's bouncing off some key levels. If this dollar Swiss franc doesn't break below this 92.75, 92.60, 92.50 area, and it continues back higher, then everything will probably reverse, and the euro dollar, pound dollar, euro yen pairs, so on, will continue down. So we've got a couple of interesting setups. This dollar CAD as well is looking not too bad. It's been bouncing off this gap here, and it's been staying for the most part below the moving average. So a little dollar CAD sell might be good there at the break of about that 100.94 area, right around there. So just kind of watch for that, and let's see if we get a breakout there. But lots of confirmation that we need. We'll see you in the chat, and we'll just kind of keep waiting for a little more clarity on these markets. Best of luck, guys, and we'll see you soon.